A couple of years ago, in fact, last year, I think it was, I passed out a booklet. And so I kind of reproduced the booklet this year. Since we didn't get a chance to use it last year, if I recall correctly, we got stuck on playing the game, the medicine wheel, and so we didn't get to the book. And so I would ask you to look with me briefly through the booklet as we look at this whole topic of leadership. One of the dilemmas in the church is that, or with the church, is that we have to operate in a dual capacity. We operate as organism and organization. Organism is a living thing. Organisms need food, water, oxygen. They respond to their environment. They adapt to change in their environment. They grow, they develop, they evolve, they reproduce. Organisms are independent and usually have some central control, the brain or whatever. And so the church is organism. We have to reproduce ourselves. That's one of the things Jesus said to us, that we were to go and to make disciples. That as an organism, we are always trying to change ourselves or change our environment or reproduce ourselves. Organization, on the other hand, is a group of people identified by a shared interest or purpose. For instance, a business, a social arrangement which pursues collective goals. Organizations frequently become self-serving, however, because they seek to stabilize themselves, to conserve energy and resources to ensure their survival. And that is also true of the church. The church sometimes become self-serving. They tend to maintain the status quo and therefore can include or can incline toward lethargy. We often say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so we take this attitude in the church quite often when it comes to the idea of leadership. We keep leaders year in and year out, whether they are productive or not. But the dilemma is that as the Church of Jesus Christ, we are both organism and organization. The church is the only organization that is provided for in the New Testament. And so we could probably assume that we are the only, we're the only ones apparently essential to the carrying out of the purposes of Christ. He's left the responsibility of reproducing ourselves or to making him known to us, the church. Have to keep in mind also that the church is a theocracy and not a democracy. We are to be governed by God. God wants to be our governor. He wants to be our source. Now, with this whole matter of leadership, leadership is the holding of a position of a leader, having the capacity to lead, to lift people up, to inspire to action, or one who leads, a guide or a conductor, one foremost or eminent in position or influence, one first in line or procession. Now, mind you, I often say that sometimes we think that because we are the president, that we are the leader. That is not always true. Sometimes the leader is sitting in the back, in the corner, and their body language is really telling the people, the group, what they really believe or how they feel, and the folk are watching them. You think you're up here leading, but the leader is in the back. This whole matter of leadership has to come, the leader has to understand that he or she have to delegate some responsibilities. You can't do it all yourself. The leader is to see that it gets done, but it does not mean that the leader has to do it. there are some steps in remembering when and how to delegate. First thing you have to do is decide what needs to be done. You can give the delegation to a committee or to a person, but they have to understand that they're making the decision, they're making a decision, but the final decision is to be brought back to the group so that the group can make the final decision. You ought to prayerfully select the best person to do the job. I attended a workshop some time ago with American Baptists, and I was convicted and convinced of this fact that we don't spend enough time praying about persons who are to do certain things in our group, in our church. However, we have to prayerfully select the best person. You don't have to select someone just because they do this in their public life. I often remind Christian education leaders and workers that just because a person is a good public school teacher does not always mean that he or she is going to be a good Sunday school teacher or a good vacation Bible school teacher. You have to prayerfully select the person who is going to do the job. Thirdly, you have to make the assignment clear. Make sure you tell them what you want them to do. Don't let them have to guess at what you want from them. Let them spell it out, even if you have to put it in writing. The specific task that you want them to do. You don't want them to cover the whole world. You want them to simply take care of a task and bring it, their decision, if it's a personal decision or group decision, back to the group so that the group can make the final decision. Be sure people understand that there is a level of authority. We sometimes give people to think that because we ask them to do a task, because we want them to do something for us, that one of the things they leave feeling like, okay, I am now in charge. No, that is not the case. We're not making you the head honcho. We're simply asking you to take a specific piece of whatever we're doing and plan and execute that plan and bring it back to us. You do the job, but you don't have to report back every 5 minutes. If I give you a task to do, I'm asking you to do it because I believe that you can get it done. You can either do the job and you don't have to report back, or you can do the job and you can come back immediately with a report. If you got a quick idea, you can come back, or you can wait until the next meeting. But you have to come back with some kind of recommendations. It's key that everybody understands what is to be done. If it's a group effort, then everybody in the group is to understand what is to be done. Now, the leader has been delegated. They've been given the responsibility of bringing this task to fruition. But if it's a group decision, the entire group has to understand what it is to be done. And if there is a report to be brought back, that a report has to come back. And then finally, what the time frame is. They do not have the leisure of just dragging this out for 6 months. You let them know that you want it done and that you need it done in a short period of time. Or if you want them to report back to the next meeting, you tell them quickly and clearly that this is something I want you to do, but I want you to bring the report back to the next meeting. Another key area is to be able to anticipate problems in advance. Be sure that the entire group understands the authority that has been given as well as the limitations that have been given. Again, it's not endless. It doesn't go on forever. You don't decide what or when the project is to come to an end. The group makes that decision, and that ought to be clear from the very beginning when you're given the responsibility. You have to perhaps establish some regular checkpoints. Never allow a committee or an individual to conduct work on a project without some midpoint project check. How's it going? How's the group going? Is everybody working? Does everybody understand what they have to do? Checking with them to make sure that they are clear about when this has to be done, and if there is to be a midpoint check, then it has to do that. You always have to evaluate, and I think that's one of the things that we fall short in our work, is that we don't always evaluate. We have to build on the evaluations. Look at the evaluations. Everything you do, you should have an evaluation of it. It can be a written evaluation, or it might be verbal or vocal. Whatever the process is that you use, you should evaluate constantly what it is that you did right and what it is that you did wrong. Show people that you appreciate what they did. Now, you may, once the task is completed, you may publicly and the whole group thank the person. You may send them a card. You may write them a note. You may send them some flowers. However you do it, make sure that the people understand, or the people know, that you appreciate what they did. Even if it's something that you aren't crazy about, the end product, you requested them to do it, so you should let them know that you appreciate the work, the time that they put into it. There are some times when you should not delegate. One, you should not delegate when only you know how to do the job. Now, if it's something that nobody else in the group knows how to do, then you better go in and get it done. Don't give somebody a job to do that you know they don't know how to do it. If you're the only person that knows how to make a sweet potato pie, don't make an assignment to someone in the group to make a sweet potato pie. When you have not adequately prepared those to whom you will delegate, let people know ahead of time. Check with them. I need this done. Do you think you could do it? Do you think you'd be comfortable doing? However you want to do it, make sure that you prepare them ahead of time. The Bible says to us that we are to lay hands on no man suddenly. Don't just go picking people out. You have some conversation with them to see if they're willing or if they think they are able. When you're really passing the buck for something, you know is your responsibility. You don't give it to someone else if you know if you're the leader, then it is not your responsibility to pass that something from a leadership role or leadership perspective onto somebody else. No, don't pass the buck. You do your job and ask them to do their job. Or when you know the situation is sticky. Now, this is quite often, this happens in organizations when there's some sticky situations and you don't want to get caught with it, you give it to somebody else. No, you don't pass on stuff that is sticky, and you don't want to get involved in it. If you don't, why would somebody else want to get involved in it? If you don't want it, why do you think somebody else is going to get involved in it? But there are some benefits and some handicaps to this piece on leadership and delegation. The pros are it gives people a sense of participation. Again, and I may have said this before, but it is the leader's responsibility to see that it gets done, not to do it. if you allow people, or if you do everything, you want to be out there in the forefront doing everything, if you want to always be seen, folk will sit back and watch you and let you do it. But if you want to give them a sense of participation, then that's possible. That's a good thing that you should do for the people. It makes people aware of the many responsibilities of the leader. Some folk think that the leader has nothing to do, or the person in charge has nothing to do, that they're lazy, that they're just trying to get everybody else to do their work. No, that is not always true. Oftentimes, most of the time, the leader realizes that he or she has a lot of responsibilities, and he or she wants the people to get involved in the work, and so they let them share in bringing projects to fruition. It also makes other people available. It shows you the talents of other people. Give them the opportunity to do it, and you'll be able to see that they have some talents. They bring some skills. They have a skill set that they bring with them. It allows for others to gain experience and training. You will not be the president all the time. And so you need to be at all times training people, letting them know what you do. Don't try to hide stuff or put stuff aside so that nobody will know what your job is. No, you're training them and you're giving them experience in what you're doing, and so that if something happens and you are not able to carry out your responsibilities, the work does not stop with you. And then the last thing, it frees you to do some other maybe larger things. You don't have to get involved in setting the table. If you want the table set, then you should have somebody that you can ask or delegate to set the table. They know how to set the table. You don't have to walk behind them and tell them where to put the fork, where to put the knife, and where to put the spoon. No, you can ask them to do it, make sure that they know the proper way to set a table, and once they know how to set the table, let them do it. You're training them, you're giving them experience and doing it. Now, there are some drawbacks, perhaps, to delegating. And I think I may have said this before also. One of the drawbacks is that sometimes when you delegate some things to some people, they assume that they have more power or more authority than they really have. You have to be careful of that, to make sure that you say to them, okay, I'm not asking you to take over the ship. I'm not asking you to become the captain. I'm simply asking you to help us be a part of the crew. You have to also understand that even though if you want something done, you probably have to get somebody who's already doing something, because if they're not doing anything, chances are they're not going to do anything. But you have to be careful that you're not overloading people, that they don't have a feeling like they have too much to do and they won't put their all into it. And the other side of it is that there is always the possibility that they may not do the job that you want done, but you ask them to do it. So allow them to do it, and in your evaluation process, then you can say to them, okay, perhaps this could have been done, or this should have been done, and as a part of the evaluation, you say to them, okay, so the next time we will possibly use another means, another method. Now, for the last couple of years, I think, the Commission on Christian Education had a committee who were to put together a leadership guide for the auxiliaries of our church, and this has been completed, and we passed it out last year, but we never got a chance to do it, to look at it. So this year we're looking at this guide. It should be in your folder. It's called A Guide for Effective Leadership. Serve the Lord with Gladness. And in this we have a message from who is now our pastor emeritus, and a message from the Minister of Christian Education to help you understand that that a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of energy went into this. We have a section in here that is called "The Church is the Living Body and Must Have Working Parts." That is key. We talked about earlier the church being organism. It is living, and it is at its best when everybody is doing their part. Ephesians chapter 4 talks about this body with many parts, and all parts have a value to it. Your hand can't say to your feet, "I don't need you," or your eye to your ear, "I don't need you." No, each part has a responsibility that must be kept. And so what we did was come up with the roles and responsibilities for all of the officers within your group that we know most groups have. Now, this may not be complete. There might be some officers that you have in your group that is not in this book. Then if it's not in this book, then you need to put in writing what the roles and the responsibilities are for those offices. But we went through it and came up with most of the roles and responsibilities for the officers in your group. For instance, the president, the chairman, or the convener, the director, or the coordinator. Number one, must know parliamentary procedure. One of the interesting occurrences that I've had since I've been Minister of Christian Education was I visited an auxiliary meeting, and someone made a motion, and someone else seconded the motion, but that ended it. The motion to this day, as far as I know, has never been carried. The president, the leader, the coordinator, the convener, whatever your title is, must know parliamentary procedure, basic parliamentary procedure. You don't have to know Robert's Rules of Order, but you ought to know how to properly carry a motion, conduct a meeting. The president presides at the meetings, as well as if your group has an executive committee, the president presides at those meetings as well. The president should know the general oversight of all of the ministry, all of the work of the ministry. He should know and carry out the mission of the church as it relates to that particular ministry. Several years back, we asked each group in our church to write a mission statement, and that mission statement was to tie them into the church's mission statement. It is not just something that you wrote and it was just out there. No, it ties in with the church's mission statement. As the church says it will carry out its mission and ministry, then those auxiliaries tie into that, because you do, the small groups carry out the mission and ministry of the church. The president should attend quarterly church meetings. It's key that you know what's going on in the church so that you can share with your constituency what the church is doing. The president is an ex officio member of all auxiliaries, guilds, and subcommittee. You are a member of everything. If you set up, and we talked about delegating, if you delegate a group or a person to do something, then you are a member of that group. You have the right to visit that group. You can go into the meetings whenever you see fit. The president also appoints standing committees and calls for reports from those committees or from all of the officers and the committee chairpersons. And so we went through each one of the officers in the group and gave them some definition as to what their role and responsibilities are. And so this handbook was put together by the Commission on Christian Education, a committee from the Commission on Christian Education, and it's in your packet, and we would, you can gladly reproduce it and give it to each member in your group, or you may just give it to your officers, but each person in your group should know what the group does, how it acts, what it is to do, how it responds to the full life of the church. And now I am to be followed by Mrs. Gwen Winfrey.